Good morning from London. I'm Wei Yang, President of the Royal Town Planning Institute. It is indeed a special privilege for me to launch the RTPI International Strategy 2021 to 2030 today. I welcome everyone joining this special event in the UK and internationally. I'm also delighted to have some of our excellent members around the world join me today. Sophie Butcher from Australia, Rebecca Wong from Hong Kong, Omar Islam from UAE, Professor Vanessa Watson from South Africa, and Sandy Panford from Barbados. I'm afraid Sandy's video has some problems, so we won't be able to see her today. I'm sure a picture of her will be seen later. Also, two of our past presidents, Janet Askew, now chair of our international committee, and Ian Tant, now vice president of Commonwealth Association of Planners, are with us too. The launch of the new international strategy is another step forward in delivering RTPI's ambitious goals over the decade as a global leading professional body. We actively promote healthy, socially inclusive, environmentally and economically sustainable places. Earlier last year, the United Nations declared the beginning of a decade of action. Around the same time, the RTPI also published our new corporate strategy 2020 to 2030. It demonstrated our determination that town planners must take the lead, enabling the built environment to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In this crucial moment of our planet's history, we need to think globally and act locally. We need to find innovative and sustainable solutions to tackle the world's biggest challenges, ranging from poverty to climate emergency and biodiversity crisis, from inequality to humanitarian crisis, and from pollution to public health crisis. I'm really proud that the RTPI International Strategy is centered on a vision for planning as a positive force for global sustainable development. It is focused on a mission to empower our members to lead our action internationally. Despite the impact of COVID-19, the preparation of the strategy has been an inclusive exercise. During 2020, the International Strategy Working Group worked across RTPI committees, panels, nations, and regions in developing the strategy. I enjoyed myself very much being a member of the working group too. So now, without further ado, I would like to invite Janet Askew, the chair of the RTPI International Committee, to use 10 minutes to give us an introduction of the international strategy. Janet, are you ready? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last week, a planner from Guyana in South America and a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute contacted me about the 2021 Caribbean Urban Forum Conference to be held in Georgetown this year. And I thought it's such a privilege to have a job in which probably every day I talk to a diverse and wide-ranging group of people from so many places in the world. And being a member of the profession of town planners, the RTPI has brought me this rich life. And this reinforces my resolve to do all I can to help the RTPI to become more international in its outlook. However, let's not forget, the RTPI has always been an international profession. After all, our founder, Thomas Adams, after he'd set up our institute in 1914, he went on to set up the planning professions in America and in Canada. So in the 1920s and 30s, he recognized the value of internationalization, and so must we. So let's first consider the background for our new international strategy. What is guiding us? We know that many of the world's greatest challenges are common to us all. Climate change, poverty, inequality, rapid urbanization are ubiquitous problems faced by everybody. And we now have a context to guide our policies, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Their main aim is to eliminate poverty, and those goals shine a light on planners and help governments to acknowledge the huge contribution that we will make to achieve them. And now further context must be added, a pandemic. Since we started to write the strategy, we've come to realise how vital town planning is and will be for our recovery in the post-COVID era. Already, there is a worldwide exchange of ideas about this and some very welcome conversations, quite frankly, about resetting our values for a better society. So the context to our new international strategy is telling us that planning will be better received and we can implement our ideas better if we work with planners across the world. And we will be able to help each other to persuade governments and communities, and we mustn't forget that we have a big job there, that good planning creates a better society and a better environment. So today, I welcome all those who have helped write this strategy, including our international officer, Michele, who is the main author. And in having so many auspicious guests here, it tells us just how many friends the RTPI has in all corners of the world. We have 26,000 members in 80 countries. And I thank you all for your contribution to our profession. And we will work with you to make this strategy work for everybody. The main question is, what contribution can we as RTPI planners make to this vast international agenda? In recent years, there's been a considerable increase of activities in which we participate. We've expanded what we do with quite limited resources, and our ambitions to do more are extensive. And I just want to give you a few examples of how we're going to go about this. Do read the strategy in full. But first of all, let's ask some questions. How can we promote the value of RTPI membership internationally? We have to ensure that RTPI members are heard. We trust that our core values of high professional standards and a strong code of ethics will mean that we are respected for our expertise. And we will support our members in whatever country they live and put them in touch with each other through our international networks. We'll facilitate exchange by, for example, looking at mutual recognition between our professions. And then we can welcome each other to work in each other's countries. This is of particular benefit, I hope, to young planners, to have an opportunity to be part of a huge network of like-minded people, because the next generation of policymakers will build their ideas through global cooperation. And we also believe that by working with other built environment professions, we can make a difference, especially in areas of crisis. And we're already doing some of this, of course, particularly in our work on building capacity in planning. Many countries are not so fortunate as we are in having such a mature profession. How will we support planning knowledge globally? It's our second question. Well, we mainly do this through our now extensive research effort. During our 2014 centenary year, we wanted to reach out to global partners, and our centenary publications attracted a wide readership, often aimed at practitioners, with plenty of international examples of good practice. And we set ourselves a standard of liaising with partners from all over the world to publish our research, sometimes translating it into different languages. We have an international peer-reviewed journal, Planning Theory and Practice, and we have a well-established book series. And by collaborating with international planning schools and research institutes and growing these relationships, and this will mean accrediting more planning schools, we hope to shape the direction of research to ensure that it has more impact. And now we're set to make a big contribution to the world's research for solutions for post-COVID recovery. At present, there is actually a vast literature emerging on how to achieve a fair and equitable distribution of wealth, as well as access to the means of maintaining a healthy life. But the current crisis calls for governments to rethink how we live. And we must have a say in this. It enables us to reiterate our expertise to show that planners are pivotal to restarting the economy and addressing the reorganization of the physical environment that COVID requires. And as a global institute, I think that the RTPI really is in a position to lead on this. My third question is, how do we raise the profile of planning for global challenges? Well, put simply, we forge partnerships and we build on our existing relationships to raise the profile of the profession worldwide. We have many long-standing partnerships already. We're very active with the 54 countries in the Commonwealth Association of Planners, with potentially 47 countries in Europe through our membership of the European Council of Spatial Planners, and with many other countries not represented in these fora, for example, through UN Habitat and the Global Planners Network. We campaign with them and engage in consultations with them about policy at all levels globally. And one big event which is growing in profile is the World Town Planning Day. And I smile because this event is over 70 years old now, but activities are growing each year. And even better, the BBC celebrated it last 8th of November. At the RTPI, we use this celebratory day to appeal to school pupils when we try to persuade young students of the exciting and varied career that comes with being a town planner. I can assure you it is like that. The fourth question then is, how can we become more diverse and inclusive in our activities? The RTPI is making strides in this. We have a new equality, diversity and inclusivity action plan, which we've already started to implement. And it's a big step in the right direction as we try to address how we can better represent the communities we plan for, both in the UK and internationally. And to help us understand how to do this better, we'll work together to use our international outreach to increase our membership amongst planners elsewhere in the world. Our policies must be relevant, and any education and training we offer must be of universal interest. In order to achieve this very ambitious agenda, we rely on two things. First, the Institute itself being international across all its functions. Everyone has a role to play. For example, our policy and research team, which is already very active in this field, will continue doing research into common issues, working with all our international partners and planners who have global interests. The Education Department must work with our existing planning schools in accrediting new international universities, and this in turn will help to meet our growth strategy of the RTPI, increase our membership globally, and ensure that it's more diverse. But it is our own members in 80 countries who we know will be delighted to help us deliver our international agenda and who are very aware of the benefits it brings to their practice, and especially young planners. So many already extend a hand of friendship to planners elsewhere. Across our nations and regions in the UK, we're building a network of international groups. We want them to expand. For example, by working with the local universities, international students can be embraced into these networks and supported in their paths to becoming chartered planners in our institute. And we'll set up a Planning for Global Sustainable Development network, which will work with external stakeholders to respond to consultations and act as a conduit for international planners to work together. We'll also support our planners in setting up events being held in whatever country they live in, and where possible, engage with major international events and major conferences at which we will speak. And right now, engage with the huge number of COVID response discussions about the future of our planet. And as part of our 10-year plan, a campaign aimed at government seeks to invoke the slogan, "Planning is great," which is directly aimed at the export of planning expertise to other countries. Now, this offers numerous opportunities, and it is a campaign that our President, Wei Yang, feels very strongly about, and she will be promoting this to her considerable networks during her presidential year. Finally, I turn to the late John Friedman, one of the greatest planning theorists, who wrote extensively about comparative planning, and who I had the pleasure to meet in 2015 in Canada. He advocates that we need to make an effort to learn about the differences in planning between countries if we are to move forward, as planning becomes, as he says, increasingly global in its reach. But he says that as we enter into the stream of global planning conversations, we must make sense of each other's ideas and filter them through our own cultural traditions to meet the challenges each of us face in whatever country we live. In other words, we must recognize our differences to make a more diverse profession. Finally, he reminds us that young people come into planning to change the world. Yes, I agree. They are idealistic, and we have a duty to them as the next generation of planners. And I believe that through our international strategy, we can facilitate planners to achieve these far-reaching and ambitious goals and convince everyone that the public interest globally is well served by good planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Janet. What a comprehensive and inspiring introduction of the international strategy. I'm very delighted actually to hear you mentioned about young people and our future talents and the students, because actually as the president, I selected the winner of the World Town Planning Day, our student competition, from student aged from 11 to 15 or 16 to 18. We have two groups, and I was so inspired by them, because I think actually our future generations, they are naturally born global citizens. For them, there is no even country boundaries, and also they see the world in a much more strategic way. And one student said, actually, we put sustainability as our first priority before profit. So I think we have such a hopeful future generation. I think they all should become planners or know more about the planning profession. Thank you very much for that, Janet. Now I'm going to invite our international members to share their thoughts of the international strategy based on their own experience and the need. Sandy, Vanessa, Oma, Rebecca, and Sophie, I'm going to invite you one by one to talk about how the international strategy can support you and what you want to see in the next stage implementation plan. Sandy, may I start from you, please? Sandy Penfold is the director of Penfold Associates. With extensive experience on housing and urban regeneration, Sandy worked in the UK local planning authorities for 39 years before returning to Barbados in 2008. Since returning to Barbados, Sandy has undertaken consultancy work for the government of Barbados in the redrafting of the planning legislation. Sandy is also an active member of Barbados Town Planning Society. Sandy, you have extensive planning experience both in the UK and Barbados. What's your source of the international strategy, and what do you want to bring out from the key message in there? Sandy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm speaking to you this morning from Barbados, where, as Wei said, I was born and educated, and then I came to the university, as many people of my generation did, to study town planning. When I qualified as a planner, I worked in local government in the northwest of England for 39 years, and then I took early retirement and went back to my home country, Barbados, in 2008. I think it's right to say that having worked in the UK gives me a very different perspective about the role of professional body can play, not just in the UK, but globally and with people all around the world. I'll start by telling you a little bit about the Caribbean, which is the region that I represent. The Caribbean comprises a number of small island developing states, many of which are very tiny and only have a handful of planners. So by way of illustration, the largest English-speaking island in the Caribbean is Jamaica, and it has less than 3 million people, while Montserrat, with a population of 5,000, is the smallest. Barbados, where I'm based, has a population of 290,000. The size of a metropolitan borough council, probably. The islands are very diverse in character, they're very diverse in history and the stage of development they're at, and they're spread widely across a very wide geographical area, over 1,000 miles. So although our region is very much at the front line in terms of things like the impact of climate change, and our tourism industry has been totally decimated by the pandemic, the resources that we have as planners to actually tackle these issues is very limited. In the sort of situation that planners are in the small Caribbean islands, it's very easy for them to feel isolated. So there are very few opportunities for continued professional development and mentoring. If you're the only planner on an island, it is difficult to find someone to mentor you locally. Local planning societies like the one we have in Barbados try to provide support, but we only have 20 members, and many of those aren't even professional planners. So I am very keen and very hopeful that the proposals contained in the international strategy being launched today could go some way to give us the backup that we need, because I think it's support to do our jobs that's needed in small places like this. I would particularly support the focus on supporting planning knowledge globally, on exchange of knowledge and research and best practice across the globe and between partners, because it's not just between the UK and individual countries, but it's across the globe, sharing experience. I think what the current pandemic has taught us is that the world is increasingly connected, and that digital platforms allow us to share information, and it doesn't really matter where we are in the world. So the legacy, and I think one of the positive benefits of COVID, should make it much more easy to achieve the objectives of the strategy in a way that I think a year ago many of us would have thought was impossible. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say we welcome the support, we welcome the broad goals of this strategy, and we really look forward to working together in partnership across the globe so that we can bring these well-meaning goals to tangible reality and engage our local communities in planning as a profession, but also as a function, which is so important if we're going to make major changes to the way the world comes out of this current pandemic. Can I thank you again for inviting me and say I am really enjoying today.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Such a powerful message from your talk. I think supporting members is one of the key pillars in our corporate strategy, and also is one of the key message we want to send out in our international strategy. I think, as you said, actually our members are all around the world. We have 26,000 members in over 80 countries worldwide. So how to support our members effectively and efficiently is a key thing we want to consider. I think, as you said, actually the current digital technology empowered us with more possibilities to think innovatively about how we can engage members. And more importantly, we can share our message across the world to promote the profile of planning, to raise the profile of planning. Thank you so much for that, Sandy. Now, I would like to invite Professor Vanessa Watson from Cape Town University. Vanessa has published widely on planning theory, African cities and urbanization, urban food security, etc., etc. Vanessa was the lead consultant for the UN Habitat's 2009 Global Report and has been leading Global Planning Education Association Network and Association of African Planning Schools. Vanessa, as a leading expert on planning education and urban planning in the Global South, what's your advice for the next stage implementation plan of the international strategy? Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for this invitation to speak, and many congratulations on the launching of your new international strategy. I'm speaking to you from Cape Town, and our Masters in City and Regional Planning at the University of Cape Town was accredited by the RTPI in 2013. We've greatly benefited from being an RTPI school, and especially our students who have often traveled to the UK to work and have been greatly assisted and helped by the RTPI with contacts and advice. So I'm certainly very pleased to see the new international strategy, and I do believe this is going to help a lot in exposing UK schools and membership and international members to the wider global planning issues. So I particularly welcome the forefronting of the strategy in the strategy to the Sustainable Development Goals and the key issues which they aim to address. Now, I'm hoping that the strategy can address two areas in which we in Cape Town have certainly felt at a physical distance from the UK, which we are. And I think the first has been the fact that many face-to-face contact meetings, conferences, presentations, awards have inevitably taken place in the UK, and it has been difficult for us to be there. But so much interaction has now moved online during the course of the last year that this must be possible to overcome. Last year, we managed an accreditation visit online, and while we greatly missed the presence of Janet, it showed that doing business this way is possible. It was great. The second aspect of distance we have felt, I think, has been the small number of RTPI members in South Africa. And I've sometimes worried about finding new RTPI members to sit on our accreditation board, undertake mentoring, and so on. And this is something that the international strategy can very directly address. There needs to be direct value and benefit for a planner in South Africa to be an RTPI member. And I'm guessing there are two aspects which local planners would find attractive. The one is online courses with international content. I think people will appreciate that. And the second is networking internationally for contacts, for work, and exchange of experiences, lessons, and so on. And this can all now be done online. Promoting international contact seems to be a central goal of the new international strategy, and implementing it is going to take new forms of expertise and online content. This is a huge task in itself, but I have no doubt the RTPI is up to it. There is one aspect of the new strategy that I would like to ask the RTPI to give special attention to. Under Pillar 2 of the strategy, it mentions the aim for employers globally to recognize the membership of the RTPI as a guarantee of professional competence and ethics. And it's this question of planning ethics that I want to refer to. Now, I'm currently coming to the end of a 2-year research project on planning and corruption in African cities, taking 2 countries as case studies. And unfortunately, the survey results have been eye-opening. In one of the countries we surveyed, 46% of planners had been asked to ignore or violate rules to achieve a particular planning outcome. 35% said they had been penalized for working ethically. 70% said they were unlikely to report corruption. In the other country we surveyed, 73% of planners had been asked to violate rules to achieve a particular outcome, and an astounding 70% said they had been physically or emotionally threatened for performing their work in an ethical manner. Those are truly worrying figures. This level of corruption in planning has a severe impact on delivery of urban services to the poor in cities and on the extent of poverty and inequality. Planning institutes in most countries have ethics charters and ethics committees tasked with ensuring compliance, and yet these are often the least busy of all institute committees. Corruption is not reported and not followed up. But we've been researching a new approach to dealing with corruption, which argues that trying to enforce compliance has very little effect. Far more effective is an attempt to nurture integrity and reward positive behavior. And there's growing research on how to nurture integrity through promotional and educational activities, all activities which the RTPI can engage in. So my final plea in these few moments is for the RTPI in its international strategy to foreground ethics and planning and to devise a strategy to promote integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. That's such a strong message. I think actually it's something we are really seriously think about, because our code of conduct is to advance the art and science of planning for the public interest. So how we can make sure we can do that effectively is a very important message. Thank you, Vanessa. You also talk about how we can support planners within the country through member initiatives like networks. So our next speaker, Omar Islam, is an ideal person to talk about that. Omar Islam is an urban planner in Akins based in UAE. Omar is a licensed member of the RTPI, but I know, Omar, you have been already very active in the region in helping the formation of the UAE Planners Network. Educated in the UK, now working in the Middle East. Omar, what's your expectation of the international strategy in supporting your professional career? I'm afraid we are a little bit run out of time, so if you could keep your talk within 3 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I was going to say, I'm quite glad that Janet mentioned in her talk that young planners wanting to change the world, because whilst I don't think I ever planned on becoming a planner, I did get drawn to it at university because I did recognize that, you know, the scale of the work we do and the scope and how it intersects with various factors, be it economics, natural resources, culture, institutional capacity, and whatnot. It just sort of, I recognized how groundbreaking the planning profession could be. And when I reflect on how planning is sort of how it plays out at the local scale, I mean, in the Middle East, there's so many transformational projects happening. There's also a bit of catching up that needs to be done in terms of practicing, but there's a lot of innovation happening on the ground and sort of people trailblazing already, be it trying to, you know, pivot to align with the Sustainable Development Goals, integrating climate-friendly design into master planning, and also just building up institutional capacity. And I just think it's really welcome to sort of see that reflected, especially in the second pillar of the RTPI strategy around sort of promoting planning knowledge and sort of establishing those partnerships and sort of mutual learning on an institutional level with different bodies. I think that really gives people like an opportunity to reconcile the planning profession with the challenges that are faced in the region. And more importantly, I think in terms of making it applicable and sort of transferable to anyone, not just in the Middle East, but in any region. If it's through that research, if it's through that, you know, recognized institute, it offers members and probably even non-members the opportunity to really trailblaze in their fields. And then maybe as well, just on the sort of the third pillar as well, around raising the profile of planning, I think that probably also goes back to what made planning appeal to me. It's the global challenges we face. I think COVID really showed that to us, and obviously the sort of the battle to defeat climate change, which is coming up ahead, that will require engagement across all levels and across borders, you know, be it through networking, through capacity building, through capacity building or training exercises. And I think the RTPI International Strategy sort of driving forward with this has come at the best time to really promote the value of planning internationally. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. I think that's a very good point, because actually lots of people, they don't realize the planning profession is highly innovative. So our mechanism created for every single place is different, but actually there are lots of good experiments we can learn from each other. So the knowledge sharing would be essential between the planners globally to tackle all these grand challenges. Thank you very much, Omar, for being such an active member. I look forward to seeing you more in the future. Our next speaker is Rebecca Wong. Rebecca is Planning Director of San Hang Kai Property Group in Hong Kong. Rebecca is also a council member of the Hong Kong Institute of Planners and the co-convener of the Institute's External Affairs Committee, bridging the planning profession with the development sector. Rebecca, are you there? Can you share with us on your thoughts of the international strategy? And also last year, the RTPI and the Hong Kong Institute of Planners signed an MOU. How can we harness the knowledge generated in sister organizations to benefit the planning profession broadly? Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear President Wei Yang, Jeanette, and fellow planners, thank you for this excellent invitation that I can learn from the other planners in the world. And I believe that planners, whilst visionary, should also be down to earth. My career has always been in the private sector, and it is my passion to connect the planning profession with the development sector and bring quality planning projects from the drawing board to reality. I'd like to congratulate RTPI for the announcement of this strategy. I think this strategy, when implemented, will have far-reaching implications for the global planning communities. As many of our speakers said, our world is facing major challenges in terms of urbanization, climate change, and a new normal after COVID-19. We have about 7.9 billion people today, and China has around 18%, being the most populous country in the world. Its urbanization ratio will rise to about 70% by 2035. Fast urbanization often brings about poor air and water quality, insufficient water and waste disposal problems, and many other issues. I trust and I believe a robust city planning will be essential in managing this and other difficulties as our world's urban areas expand. Being located in Hong Kong and at the Greater Bay Area, which will have around 85 million people in 2035. And that's the total population of Germany nowadays, or a lot more than the UK added together. The role of planners and the Hong Kong IP in collaborating with RTPI and other professional institutes are all the more important. I totally agree with RTPI's international strategy to raise the profile of planning, to face the global challenges, and in promoting the sharing of planning knowledge and practice. In fact, I would like to see more like research and best practice coming out from RTPI about the impact of COVID-19 on city planning. I think that's the thing that I really look forward to. I look forward to President Wei Yang, Jeanette, and RTPI colleagues to take this strategy to full action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I really very touched by your message as to make sure actually planning is really down to earth, make sure it's implementable. And also you can see the different challenges we face from different planners from very highly populated area like Hong Kong, China, or very remote islands in Barbados. So yeah, really interesting to see actually the different challenges we face from all our members. And thank you very much, Rebecca. My last guest is Sophie Butcher, the project manager of Eaton Consulting in Australia. Sophie is a licentiate member of the RTPI. Educated at Cardiff University, Sophie relocated to Australia in 2012 and have gained majority of her professional planning experience there. Sophie is also an active member of both the RTPI and also Planning Institute of Australia. Sophie, as a young planner, what's your take from the international strategy and how it can support you?
I think one of the key messages for me that I took from it was the emphasis on climate change, and climate change is something which is seriously impacting us here in Australia, from severe droughts and bushfires of 2019-2020, coral bleaching of the barrier reef. But despite this, I still feel that climate change isn't really at the forefront of planning in Australia. And while the Planning Institute of Australia here accepts that human activity is changing our global climate and irreversible change has already happened, and that planning has to address our changing climate, there's no strategic planning documentation or policies in place which directly relate planning to climate change. And I think although the impacts that the UK and Australia will see from climate change are different, we can definitely work together to create a policy on how planning and climate change are linked together going forward, and I think that's really exciting. And then the second take, one of the important things I think for me is, which has already kind of been touched upon, it's the recognition of your becoming a registered planner and a chartered planner with the RTPI and the Planning Institute of Australia. Like, I'm working towards both of those at the same time, whereas I really feel like there could be some global recognition of the RTPI instead of kind of like just having the two separate bodies there, especially because the planning system in Australia is based partly on the UK system. I feel like there should kind of be some recognition of what RTPI means within Australia. So I think that's something that it would be definitely really interesting to see kind of what could happen with that. And I think also just the opportunity for me in Australia to be more engaged with the RTPI, I think that's really exciting, because at the moment a lot of it's hard anyway because of time difference, but I think COVID's something that's definitely helped with, I think, bringing people kind of from across the world together easier. We're now way more reliant on webinars and video conferencing and all that kind of thing. So technology is really on our side with that, and I think it'd be great if, yeah, to actually have the opportunity to be more actively engaged in the RTPI and just kind of like getting those global networks and connections that are, you know, as we've said before, I do think that planning is becoming more global, and I've already kind of used it because I'm part of the Planning Institute of Australia, and we have a women's planning networking group, and I've already kind of used the contacts to kind of connect with other women's planning groups internationally. So yeah, I think those will be really good. And I think what I kind of want to see next from the implementation plan is just kind of a clear-cut way on how we kind of go about achieving these goals, because I feel like a lot of strategic planning policies, they're full of great content, but it's how do we get there, how do we achieve it? And I think, yeah, it'd be really interesting to see.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Some very interesting suggestions. And I think actually how we can articulate the planner's role in the climate change is very important one, because I think at the moment the climate change actions have been taken on a sector by sector basis, but being a spatial, say we handle spatial issues, I think we can really think things in a much more comprehensive and integrated way. And also your suggestion about global recognition of planners is something we have been thinking about in the Global Planners Network. So watch the space. I think we'll have some more interesting news in the future. Thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you. Last but not least, I would like to invite Ian Tant. Ian, you were the RTPI president in 2019. Now you are the RTPI representative on the Commonwealth Association of Planners. How you envisage the new international strategy can facilitate more international collaborations, and how important they are? I'm afraid we are a little bit run out of time, so if you could keep your answer within 1 or 2 minutes, that would be really appreciated. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Wei. I just want to very quickly explain a little bit about the Commonwealth Association of Planners, because although all RTPI's chartered members are actually members of CAP, I don't think many people actually recognise that. CAP is a member, is an international or global institution promoting professional planning as a fundamental part of human settlement. It's formed of 27 member organisations across Commonwealth nations, and it represents some 40,000 professional planners. CAP's primary purpose is to promote good planning and sound governance across the Commonwealth, applying the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And indeed, in recent surveys that CAP's conducted with its fellow Commonwealth organisations, it's actually identified a desperate shortage of planners and other built environment professionals across the globe. And I think it's in that sense that the RTPI's international strategy, which is aimed at helping to grow and develop planning across not just the UK but the globe, is very much to be welcomed. CAP is working hard with its fellow organisations to seek the support of all Commonwealth governments in delivering sustainable urbanisation. We recognise that 50% of the projected growth in cities across the world will be in the Commonwealth, and we've launched a call to action which it will be promoting to Commonwealth heads of government at their meeting in Rwanda in June. And importantly, we're taking the plea for action on sustainable urbanisation to the COP26 climate change conference in Glasgow in November. I should say as well that working with partners, CAP has also developed a rapid planning toolkit to help communities where professional resource is scarce and to help them plan for urban growth and deliver essential infrastructure in step with good housing. I'm therefore, on behalf of CAP, delighted to welcome the launch of the International Strategy for the decade to 2030, which is the United Nations Decade of Action, on the same timescale in which the Sustainable Development Goals are to be applied. And I'm delighted to see the RTPI's international aims to promote planning knowledge and practice and raise the profile of planning for global challenges. I'm particularly looking forward to seeing CAP and the RTPI working together at COP26 later this year in promoting the critical role that planning can have in delivering climate action. Congratulations to the RTPI on forming and delivering and now launching its international strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. I couldn't agree with you more. As president, I attend the Global Planners Network meetings with our chief executive, Victoria Hills. After our discussions and meetings, I often have a very strong sensation that as town planners, we face very similar challenges worldwide. It is urgent to raise the profile of planning globally, and the planners around the world need to be united to tackle the challenges together. So I sincerely hope the new international strategy will facilitate collaborative actions across Institute's membership and inspire further engagement with wider stakeholders worldwide. So now, may I invite all the speakers turn on their cameras. I think it's time for us to say goodbye to all the audience. I really enjoyed our conversation today. We can be here for days and hours to talk more. So let's keep the conversation going. I really look forward to seeing transformative changes on how we plan the world we need through more international collaborations and knowledge sharing. Now we are reaching the end of today's launch today. Here, I would like to thank all the speakers and the audience joined us from different time zones around the world today. I think you can see from Sophie's background is evening time in her time, and Rebecca is the same. So thank you for doing that. And also, I would like to thank members of the International Strategy Working Group, the International Committee, and everyone contributed to the development of the strategy. My special thank you goes to the RTPI International Policy and Research Officer, Dr. Michele Vianello. Also, a big thank you to our event team for organizing and running today's launch so smoothly. I send my warmest good wishes to you all. Goodbye from London. Thank you.